Bryn Porcio, TopVelocity.net, 3x pitch BioMetrics here of Aaron Little. We're going to take him right into out of his leg lift. We can see that back leg internally rotating. Actually, let me look at this other graph here. So we can see, if we look at the green or the red check, we can see that leg is internally rotating. It's more than the one that it's showing there, and not much hip abduction. Specifically here, coming out of that, the hip's not abducting. So we really want to get that hip to lead and that knee to stay externally rotated. So if I get my drawing tool here, we want to get this hip to move more down here. Okay, so this would be the hip, pelvis, and then the femur would be out to the knee at that point and down. That's holding torsion or external rotation as we continue to carry the hip forward and down at the same rate. So we're in an unstable position, specifically with your foot up like that, hooking the rubber, that's collapsing that knee. I wouldn't want to hook the rubber, be flush, turn the knee out and more external rotation, and get more hip abduction, open up the groined area as you move forward. Also too, the trunk is leaning really far forward. You can see at 44 degrees forward, that's too far forward. You're going to want to pull back really hard to aggressively to recorrect that. Plus it's going to put you in your quad, causing you to want to collapse. So try to get the trunk more upright. So you can see as your front foot open, the back leg just collapses down, and you can see the trunk is going with it at that point. So you don't have a lot of mobility to work with. So right as your foot opens, the back leg wants to go. So you should be here at this point and still internally rotated with your drive leg. So we would want that front leg, which is the yellow check, to be a plus 20, 25 in that position. Ideally, that would help you keep your back leg in torsion. You can see your trunk is still leaning over pretty hard, and now you're going to want to pull your glove side to get that trunk back up. So if we look at your kinematic sequence, we can see the blue dot, your glove side, is pulling the highest over the red and green dots, which is your hip and trunk. So you're pulling that glove side really hard right there to get your trunk upright, which is getting upright now, and that's causing everything to fly open early and your hips and trunk to peak at the same speed. And your hip speeds are pretty low with your trunk speeds. We need more of a separation there. And we can't be pulling the glove side to create the trunk energy, because then that's going to cause everything to go together. We really need the back hip to stay loaded in torsion longer, drive through into front foot strike. So right now as you're landing, we need to get it to drive. And in that way, if the power is coming through the hip, we can counter rotate the trunk and not pull glove side and get more of that hip to shoulder separation. Because you can see just in this graph, we don't have a lot of hip to shoulder separation. And if we look at these tools, the hip shoulder lines, we can see from the top, it's completely synced up with the whole delivery. It's just moving together, hips and shoulders. We want to pull that apart by getting the hip to delay and drive more force forward into front foot strike. So at that point in front foot, we don't have any separation, and you can see the trunk's not really moving forward. If you look at the hip and pelvis position, we can see at front foot strike, which is right here, the chest is, 12 degrees to the side. So it's not too far contralateral tilt, and so it's a little bit past that, which isn't bad, but the trunk is still back, and as you go to pitch release, it moves forward, but not that much, maybe 36 inches, or that would be a total of 34 difference from where we were at front foot to there with no rotation. So ideally we want to hit front foot, and when we stabilize front foot, we want to create rotational energy and we want to take forward trunk energy. So all you really have is this little bit of forward trunk energy. If you're still closed, we could get both and we can maximize both, and that's really where the power or the energy is that we're going to get to the ball. So working on delaying the hip and getting more power of the hip to create separation will help carry more energy through the trunk rotationally and linear. Also too, it as your hip extension too is pretty tight, that we need to make sure those hips continue to go further and down. So when you hit front foot, you're not standing so tall. Your front leg's a little bit farther out. You have a lower center of gravity, more separated. And then when your trunk goes forward, it can really push farther out. Once again, more distance to create more energy. As far as your arm path, I mean, your arms cocking, all that's actually really good. It's just your kinematic sequencing is off because of no hip to shoulder separation. So you need to work on your mobility so we can make this possible for you. But right here in this position before leg drive, we have to keep this leg externally rotated. So if I go back to that drawing, I need to continue my hips more forward and down, so they'd be somewhere down here. And then this knee should still be out here in torsion. So then we can delay and drive that through later and separate the hips from shoulders right here, which is key. So that's just something you need to really spend a lot of time on. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to work through your hip mobility and your trunk mobility, and then you got to learn to train it, the sequencing in all your drills.